morning, students. In this session, you're going to see what is Spring Boot and what is architecture of your Spring Boot and a simple demonstration on how to create a RESTful APIs using Spring Boot. So first we see what is a Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a free open source Java based framework to create web applications. It is also used for creating microservice based framework used for creating microservices, and it is backend framework which is used to help us to receive the request and process the request and response it. So we can simply tell Spring Boot is used for creating RESTful web services, or we can tell it as for creating RESTful APIs. So these APIs, how we can create in the Spring Boot and how to invoke them in from different languages. So this is the overall flow architecture of your Spring Boot, where we have a client. So this is a client machine where from this a request is prepared and sent to the website, that is your server side. So this full portion is your server side, where the HTTP request will be received by the controller. So this controller job is to map the request to the respective API. So the controller will have the list of APIs inside this, and for each API which service function should be called. So that is the job of the controller. And the service layer is actually, so this controller is used for mapping all my APIs to the service class. So it can, for example, it can map, for example, home. So this is my API call for this service class A. So similarly for register, service class B. So it is used to map it and invoke the respective, based on the request from the user, it identifies which API is requested, and for that request it will invoke the respective service class. So this is the job of the controller class here. Then service layer is responsible for writing the business logic. So he is dealt with writing the business logic. So it is a purely Java class which implements all the APIs. All the implementation details of each APIs will be done in your service layer. And this the model, database and the repository class extending CRUD services, they all is used for handling the data. If I am going to work it on database connectivity, we need the database and we need the CRUD operations. CRUD operations are create, read, update and delete services, and for that we need the JPA, that is Java Persistence API, which is gives a list of interfaces through which we can invoke these services. So this is all the overall components which is available present in your Spring Boot framework, and these are the modules which must be there when I am implementing the applications. So now in today's session we are going to see implement a simple API, simple RESTful API, which is used to get the request from the client and is pass the request to the controller, and the controller has to give the service layer, and service layer will process it and send the response, and he will send the response back to the client, and in the client we can see the output. So this is the demonstration in today's class we are going to see. Now for this, the implementation side, we have to create three Java class. Okay. So 3 Java class we need. The first one is the main application class. So which is a main program that will invoke your controller. For each application class, we have to invoke a controller class. So this controller class will have all the API mapping with the respective service class, and then we have a service class. So if I'm going to create a simple API, these 3 classes mandatory. Okay. So now he will invoke the service will process and then send the response, and the controller will send response, and this will be given to the client side. Okay, so these are the 3 classes we are going to implement it. Now to make Spring Boot, we should know about the annotations. Spring Boot framework is based on annotation. Annotation is nothing called, it is a metadata. It is a metadata that gives data about Spring Boot application. Spring Boot application. So this will has multiple annotation like at annotation start with symbol at the rate of. So Spring Boot application at Spring Boot configuration at REST controller at service at request mapping at request param, etc. So there are many control annotations are there. So this, when I am going to create a simple application, Spring application, the application should start with at annotation at Spring Boot application. This wherever I have this at rate of Spring Boot application, that indicates it is the main Spring Boot application. Next, if I want to create a Java class, you should start with the control. We should intimate that it is a controller. So at annotation of controller is to be added. For service class, I should use at service. So we have to use the annotations wherever we need, so that it will automatically inject all the configuration details inside the program. So with this basic details, let's start with the demo of your Spring Boot application. So in the initial stage, I should open Eclipse now. To check with working with that Spring Boot application, we should have installed the Spring tools. For that, you should go to the Eclipse Marketplace. In the help, you have Eclipse Marketplace. In this, you should type in the search bar in this you type Spring tools. So this you go for this Spring tools 4, Spring tools suite 4, right? So it is already installed, so it shows, otherwise you install it, and then after that you can create the project. So now we should check whether we have Spring Boot option. If you go to this new, if it is there, you should give Spring Starter project. If it is there, you install the Spring tool suite here. Okay, otherwise check in the other also, it will be available. If it is not present here, check in other. In the other, if it is not available, then you are not successfully installed. So you can see a folder called Spring here, right? So if I expand the Spring Boot, I'll be getting Spring Starter project. Okay, so first step, install this Spring tool suite. Next is, now we are going to create the project. For that project, we can create that Spring Boot project in two ways. The first one is, I can go to new, start with the Spring Starter project. Then you should give the name. So I give the name to be demo 5, or I'll give simple REST API. Okay, so I give the name as simple REST API. And next select the Maven type. There are two types of project I can create, Gradle and Maven. If I use Maven type of project, making that shows that the configuration files will be built in a XML format. And choose the language to be Java. There are different languages are there, Kotlin, Groovy. So even this Groovy and Kotlin work with the Gradle type. Okay, since I'm using Maven, I select Java here. And packaging I can download and upload in a jar format, and Java version is 17, since I have given simple RESTful demo project. And a package name I can change it, so I give a name called, so make it as a standard one, I make it as Spring Boot com.springboot dot simple REST API. So that this name I gave. Okay, so next you click, then in this we have to click on this web. Under this web, select Spring Web. Okay, so Spring Web is selected. So like this, whatever extension you want, you can add it here. So if you want to work with database, I can click on this now, SQL. If I want security, I can click on this and add what are the dependencies you want, you can add it here. So that is project dependencies, right? So whatever you need for your application, you can select. As of now, we are developing simple web application, so I need only a Spring Web alone. Next, I'll click, then finish. So if I have done properly, here I would have created a folder. A folder name is simple REST API, and to make it as a Spring Boot, boot will come. So this boot has come, meaning my construction of this page is perfect. The project is now good. Now click on this source main Java. In this, if you see a default package is there, what we have created, I gave this name, the same name. Inside this, if I expand, I'll be having a application. So this is your main application. So as I told in the thing, we have this control application, main application, right? So this main application will be automatically created by this environment. Okay, so this is created with the same name what you have gave, and it has only one main method. So you keep it as it is, don't disturb this method. So keep it as it is. Our next job is we have to create a controller class and a service class. So just we'll see how to create them. Go to this my folder, simple REST API, and then go to source main Java. Click on this, right click, and create two packages. One is for controller, one is for service. Okay, so what the name I gave is com dot springboot dot my file name dot controller. Okay, so this should make sure that this package path of your main class should be the parent folder for the controller and service. If this is not perfect, then the main class will not find the corresponding controller or the service. So always give the correct name. So your main class is having com.springboot.simple REST API, the same package dot control. So it acts as a subfolder under this main function. So everything should be under the main. So only you have to name the package in this order, then finish. Similarly, we create one more new package for service. So com dot springboot dot simple REST API dot service. So I have one controller class and I have one my service class, right? So now right click on this service class, controller class, create a new Java class. Okay, so the class name will be, I make it as a simple controller. Okay, simple controller, finish. So a class is created, and similarly for the service create one more class. The class, I name them as simple service. Finish. So you can see that inside this service folder I have one simple service.java, and in the controller folder I have one this simple controller.java. Now two classes I have created. Now we have to do the implementation. So first we'll check with this controller. So this is a simple Java class. To make it as a controller, we should use the annotation at REST controller. So make that it is a controller, it is not a normal Java class, right? So now if you see that this is showing a color, meaning it needs respective packages. So automatically you can see that import REST caller. So it add the import thing. Now it is REST control annotation is valid, so it takes all the thing from the this particular import, all the functionalities from this we can add. So it is found in org.springframework.web.bind.annotation.rest controller. Now this controller is going to handle some requests from the user, right? So this controller is specifically for mapping their request for API to the particular service. For that we have to give another annotation, that is request mapping. So this also we have to import it from package. So if I click on this import, so it will be on the bind.annotation rest request mapping. Now we have to implement the code for this simple controller. What we are going to do is just we are going to for example, I'm from the front end, the user is typing his name. Now my controller have to hand by submit button, the user will be invoking the particular API, calling the API. The API should return the welcome that username. So that is the thing. So we'll just create that. For that we have to write some code. First we'll check how to call that logic will be done on the server side, the service method, service class, right? Now we have to get the request from the front end and pass it to the service. So now my controller is doing the middleman. Now how to get that request parameters from the front end and pass it to the service class? For that we have to write a method. So for that function, that mapping method, we have to do that mapping method. We have to have whether we are going to process the get method or post method request or whatever. So based on that we have to add the annotation. For example, I'm having a function, for example public some string it is passing. So string it will be welcome. Okay, so this is my function name, simply I'm writing now. So this is the function I'm going to create. Now this function is going to have some mapping from the front end to the back end, that is a service layer. For this I should make this function whether it is going to handle what is the HTTP method, whether it get method or post method. Second thing is whether what is the URL of that particular API. So those two informations I can add it in the init annotation. Since for example now consider I'm going to handle the get mapping. So get method, so I add get mapping. So this is we have to import it from that same thing, web.bind annotation get mapping. Inside this I should pass my URL. So I give slash let it be index or welcome or anything it can be. Okay, so I'm giving this slash this one. So this is this side. Okay, so use the double quote slash index. Now welcome. Now in this welcome I should pass some parameter, right? For passing the parameter, what I am passing the parameter is from the front end. From the front end, the parameters will be passed in the URL. So how to get it? Use a, for example, I'm going to pass a string message MSG. It is string. If I'm going to get that input from the same program, I can just pass a data type and the messaging. But this input is from the front end. So I should make that it is a request parameter from the front end. So I put that annotation request param. So I have to download, import the package for that. So public string function name, and this is the parameter at request param string message. Okay, so this method must return a, you should return. So we have to write something, let it be return. Return. What it is going to return, you should call something, let it be some string s. Okay, so make it as some s, let it be, because it shows errors because s is not defined now. Now what's our job is, when the user invokes this index URL, you should call this method. This controller should call my service class. So now I have not written the service class. So we'll stop with this. Then we'll go on implement the service class and come. So in this, it is a normal Java class. To make it as a service class, we should add annotation service. Okay. So we have to download that, import the packages. Okay, so that's done. Then inside this class we have to write a function for handling that request. So I will create a function called public function. This function is going to return the string, and my function name is, let it be welcome here also. Okay. It can be different, so to avoid confusion we'll have this welcome. So it is going to take one argument, string s. Okay, now we are going to write the statement. What we are going to write is string string message, not message of m is equal to, we are going to add welcome space lk plus s, that input I am passing. Okay, so now it is having return type, so I return this m. Okay, so this is my logic. Actually this is my, this simple service is a class which is having one microservice welcome. So this can be invoked independently. Suppose if the service class is going to have another function, I can keep on writing them. Each one is considered as a microservice which implements a separate business logic, and each service can be invoked independent of each other. Independently they can invoke, one service can be called from Java program, one service can be called from HTML program, one service can be called from JSP or PHP or whatever it may be, Node.js, anything. So that is what is called microservice architecture. So nice Spring Boot is used for implementing. It is a full framework which allows you to implement this microservices. So now, for example, we have done only one microservices welcoming the user with his name, what he has entered in the front end. Okay, so this my service class is done. So I save it. Then there is no error in this. If it is an error, we can see the red highlighted. Okay, next we'll go to the controller, because we are not done with the controller now. What we have done with the controller is just we are added that HTTP method and what is the URL from API. Then we define one method here. That method should call the service method, right? So that is missing. So for that we have to call that service method here. So we need to create an object for the service class, then call that method. What's the method name was there? I think it there also welcome, right? So this method I should call from the controller now. For this we have to create an object. Then for that object, with that object we can call the method welcome. So what is my service class name? Simple service. Simple service, and the name, let it be SS semicolon. Now it is showing error because we have to include that here, imported. So it is done. Now if I have done this, it is a local variable. If I want to make it as a global variable, I should add the annotation auto wire. So import this. Okay. So what we have done, you have made a class, made it as REST controller and request mapping, because it's going to act as a controller class and it's to handle the request from the front end. And for this or the service class, what you can have more than one service class. Okay, for this example we are using only one service class, and for this we have created the object. Now I can invoke that method dot, what is the method name in service class? Welcome. What is the value I'm going to pass it here is message. Okay. Now, so what happens here when the user invokes this index, this method will be called, and with the input will be what is the name he has given, and this method will be called in the simple service.java. So he will add welcome username there. Okay, so this is what the application. So we are done with main application, one controller class and one service class. Now next step is we have to check the properties. We have to change the server port, because multiple programs we are running in the Eclipse, right? One program all cannot run an 8080. So if I'm using the 8080 again, it will give a error message. For safer side, what we'll do is go to this and click on this application properties. In this application properties, you can add one property called server.port equal to some any port number 80, 70. Okay, save it. Now just we'll check whether our program is getting started. Sorry, not this one. So close this. We'll take this and run. Okay, program is there. So stop this. Start with this Spring Boot. REST API is in your configuration. Something mistake in this. So we have added this service. Okay. scom dot springboot dot simple REST API dot service dot simple service. Okay. So run a Spring Boot app. I'm just checking this. Before change this version to 3.0.6 if you face this error, and test it like make sure Java 17 is there. Okay, started web test and plugin. Let's see if it is starting. Oh, this folder name is wrong. So what we can do is we can once again, the folder name is not matching, right? So it creates a problem. So we'll create a new package. Package name is com dot springboot dot http dot service. So see, can you see that it is not matching? No? Spring. Okay. So we'll just see whether nothing. Okay. Now we'll copy this service and paste it here. Now we got it, right? Now we have this. Now we'll see whether we are able to run it. One second. Okay. Here you have to change it to Spring Boot, right? Now everything is fine. So Spring Boot API, Spring Boot controller. So when you're naming this file, check whether the folder is in this order. If it is not, some error is there. Okay. So we'll just run this simple API. It should start now. Yeah. So when I see this message, simple REST application started. So now it is available. Right? The server is running, and on which port number it is showing port number 8080. But it is not detected. We'll check whether it is working. Okay. Now for testing whether this API is working, but we change that port number to some other port number. First I'll check whether it is working on this. So go to the postman. In this postman is involved to test the APIs. Get select, because I use a get mapping there. So in this I will be using http localhost 8080 /index. That is my URL. Then I need one input, right? That input name must be this name, request param msg. So I'll give my request param is msg. I'll give my name. Okay, this is a value, this is the parameter. So we'll just set it and see. So it is showing welcome Deep. So this is the output I am getting. So now it shows that my API is working correctly. Now my API is ready for connecting with the front end. Now we can create any web pages. For example, already I created one thing. I'll just show one folder as you create a new, create a new web pages. So you go to dynamic web project. In this web project, I give consume simple API. Okay, simple REST API. Okay, now finish. For this consume REST API, I can go with HTML, or I can go with a JSP, whatever. So for safety, I go with this. Any name you can give. I give home.html. Finish. Now I have body tag. In this I give form method. What method we gave? Get method. Okay. And action. In this action, I'll tell what to be pasted. So I close the form. Now what is the thing I need? Enter your name. Okay, what I need, I want a text box. Input type equal to text, name equal to the name what we gave for the request param MSG. So this two front end and back end name should match, otherwise the link will not be created. Okay. Then on submit button, input type equal to submit. Value equal to enter. We give the same submit. Okay. So now my HTML is ready. So in the action thing I should call this API. So this API link is this. So here I am using in the local machine, so I am giving localhost, but when I am using any particular domain, I should give www.some. Instead of this localhost 8080, some domain name will be there, and in that particular machine, what is the URL. So this is how I call my API. Now I have called this, I save this now. One thing I have to check, because if I run this program, this will, if I run this, let it be, both will be clashing on 8080, because my Tomcat is also running in 8080 now. This is an application, this web application also running on 8080, and my Spring application, so it is encoded a problem. So this already in use. So what we can do is, we can don't change the Tomcat port number, anything, both or anything you can change. Since I'm working with the same REST API, here I will try to change here my API port. So I made it to 8070, but it is not reflecting for me. So I'll stop it. I will close the Eclipse. Okay. Then I again open Eclipse, because that port number once I update it is not reflecting, so I'm opening again. So that first you build the main class, controller class, service class, and once you are tested with Postman, it is working. My API is working now. So you have done with your implementation of a API. So now you are seeing how to call it from the front end. Okay. So here in the second source main resources, in application properties, I have this 8070. Now we'll just run it and see whether it should run on 8070. Okay, then only this will, my REST API will be running on 8070, and my front end will be running on 8080. Okay, so we can check here. It is still running on 8080 only. But it should run on 8070. We'll stop it and we will refresh it. Refresh. Still running on this. We'll change it to 7. You should run on that particular port number. No, it is running on 8095 now. Now my port is available. Now if I go and run this simple API, just click on the source main web app, home.html. So this one I'm going to run as a normal web page, how you run your servlet and all on server Tomcat 9. So now it should be opening because it is my front end is running on 8080 and then my back end API is running on 8095. So I'm getting this page. So I'm giving a name. So if you can see this, the address is local 8080 consume simple rest API is a folder name and my home.html is a HTML file. So when I give the data and submit, it should invoke that API. So it's telling it is not found. So this it is not changed here. Oh, sorry. We done one mistake. The mistake is our port is not front end. Our port is not 8080. It is 95. Now we'll just we'll see whether refreshing not this one. Again we'll run this HTML. So the same thing is coming and I'm giving the name and I submit. It should call my thing. Yes, can you see this? Localhost 8095 index. So welcome, Deepa is coming. So if you see this URL and what we have seen in this is same, right? So this is Postman is just testing. Once testing is done, then you have to develop the front end and call the respective URL here. This is where you call your API. So this is how you should create your API and invoke it from the front end. So this front end file can be anything, right? It may be a PHP, it may be a Node.js, it may be your JSP. So I'll show in Node.js how to call. So Visual Studio, I'll check any program I can have. Suppose I'm having something like this, right? Now I can replace this with 80, 80, 95 by API, right? And it is index, correct? Then sorry, this stated need to be message. We'll see whether this is running. From Node.js I'm calling. So I'm typing a name, submit, welcome. So can you see it is invoked from the this because this I'm still running that particular API in my Spring Boot. It is still running, right? So I can invoke it from any type of front end, any type of programming. That is a major advantage of microservices. You can call it from different programmings, right? So this is how you should work with your Spring Boot and create the web page. Okay, thank you. So I'll try this and work it out your projects using RESTful APIs.